Sometimes the scariest things aren't what you see, they're what you feel, but can't explain. Imagine you're standing in the middle of an old church, the dim light from broken windows spilling onto the cold stone floor. The air is thick with mold and so quiet you can hear your heartbeat. And then, a fierce bark breaks the silence. Not a normal bark. It sounds like a warning, like something is lurking right in front of you, but you can't see it. But the strangest thing isn't the bark. It's the reaction of the people around you. They don't panic. They don't wonder. They just pretend they don't hear anything. Have you ever been in that situation? A moment when every sense screams, something's wrong. But instead of listening, you tell yourself, I guess I'm just overthinking it. But what if it's more than just your imagination? What if your instincts are right, and you're the only one who realizes that? A dark secret is hiding among the people everyone trusts. Before we continue with this story, I'm curious, where did you find this story? From a friend? Out of curiosity? Or just a passing glance? Either way, you've come to the right place. And don't forget to subscribe now, because tomorrow I'm going to tell you a special story, one that might make you look at the world around you in a whole new light. Get ready, because the truth always finds a way to speak. Raven Creek, a small town nestled in the Colorado mountains, where the thick fog never seemed to lift. That morning, the gray sky seemed to color the grief of the entire community. The wind blew quietly through the bare trees, carrying the murmuring voices of the mourners gathered outside the ancient church. The funeral of Emily Carter, a young girl loved for her kindness and warm smile, took place in a heavy atmosphere. Her coffin was placed in the middle of the aisle, surrounded by wilted wreaths, as if she had not finished saying goodbye. Father Elias's prayer rang out steadily, but lacked sincerity, like a memorized speech. Then everything suddenly stopped. A fierce bark tore through the quiet space. All eyes turned to the German shepherd, Max, Emily's loyal friend. Max stood before the coffin, his whole body tense, his bright brown eyes full of chaos. It didn't just bark, it growled, it howled, and the barking was as if it was trying to scream at everyone. Something's not right here. At first, there was confusion. Then there was fear. People whispered, "He can't accept the loss. He's probably just grieving." But Max didn't stop. He jumped up, clawing at the coffin, his legs shaking with desperation. The barking became wild, desperate, as if trying to tear the wood apart and reveal a truth that humans couldn't perceive. And then, all eyes turned to one person. Father Elias, who was leading the ceremony, suddenly froze. His face, usually calm and respectful, was covered in cold sweat. His lips pressed tightly together as if trying to suppress the panic inside. His eyes avoided, not daring to look directly at the coffin or at anyone. The hands holding the Bible trembled slightly, but not from emotion. It was fear. Have you ever felt something was wrong? But everyone around pretended that nothing was wrong. Do you believe that sometimes animals can sense the truth that humans miss? The church fell into an eerie silence. Only Max's angry bark echoed. A few people began to whisper, suspicion flashing in their haggard faces. Why was Father Elias afraid of a dog? Some even began to wonder what was inside the coffin that they didn't know about. Max didn't stop. He couldn't stop. Because sometimes the truth doesn't need words to be heard. And that's when everything began to fall apart. because that funeral wasn't just to say goodbye to a dead person. It was also the place to bury a dark secret that no one expected. What do you think is happening? Is Max simply grieving? Or is he trying to warn of a terrible truth that everyone is missing? Don't look away, because the truth is waiting to be unearthed. No one paid much attention to the man standing in the back corner of the church that day. He wore a faded leather jacket, the hood covering his eyes, and stood silently observing everything without saying a word. His name was Jack Monroe, a freelance reporter from New York who traveled far and wide in search of sensational stories, untold secrets. But he had no intention of staying long in Raven Creek until he heard Max's barking, tearing through the small town's mask of tranquility. Jack didn't believe in superstitions. He believed in facts, and he knew from experience that where there was an unnatural silence, there was always something terrible. The next day, Jack began asking questions. He wandered around town, talking to the locals. His approach was not aggressive, just simple, gentle questions. What kind of person is Emily? Father Elias seems to be a respected man here, huh? Did anyone notice anything strange the day she died? The initial responses were the same. Emily was a nice girl, and Father Elias was a respectable man. But it wasn't the words that caught Jack's attention. It was the evasive looks, the unnatural pauses, and the forced smiles when the priest was mentioned. Have you ever met someone who answered you, but their eyes were hiding a different story? Are the words or the silence more revealing? Jack decided to go to where Emily had worked, the town library. It was old and dusty, with shelves stacked like walls blocking off the past. He rummaged through the old books, hoping to find some clues, and then he found it. A small, frayed, leather-bound notebook stuck behind a rotting shelf. It was Emily's diary. The page was scrawled in hasty handwriting. I can't keep quiet anymore. I know the truth about Elias. He's not who people think he is. The donations are gone, and I think I know where they are. If I'm gone, someone please find out. Jack felt a chill run down his spine. This was no longer a story about a sad dog or a bizarre funeral. This was a cry for help. Jack continued reading, each page of the diary like a piece of a dark puzzle. Emily suspected that Father Elias was not only embezzling church donations, but also manipulating the villagers' trust, forcing them to donate more in the name of saving souls. But the scariest thing wasn't the money. It was something Emily referred to in 2 words: the secret in the basement. On the last page, he found something wedged between the pages: a rusty key and a piece of paper with a rough map scrawled on it, leading to the basement of the Raven Creek Church. Have you ever wondered, if you discovered a secret that could put you in danger, would you dig deeper or stop? Is the truth worth risking your safety? That night, Jack returned to the church. The old wooden door creaked as he gently pushed it open. It was dark inside, save for the wind whistling through the broken glass. By the weak light of his flashlight, he groped his way to the altar, where the map marked a secret entrance. And sure enough, under the dusty carpet was a small wooden trapdoor, locked with an old padlock. The rusty key fitted snugly. The door opened, and a strong, musty smell wafted up, mixed with something fishy and unpleasant. Jack shined his light down, a staircase leading into darkness. His heart pounded, not from fear, but from the knowledge that the truth awaited below. Would you dare to take the step down? If you knew that each step might lead you to a secret from which there was no turning back, would you continue or turn back? Jack took a deep breath, gripped his flashlight tightly, and stepped down. Because sometimes the truth doesn't come to you. You have to go find it. Midnight in Raven Creek always had a strange silence. A silence not of peace, but of secrets buried too deep, as if the town were holding its breath to hide something. Jack Monroe stood before the heavy wooden doors of the old church. The moonlight slanted through the broken stained glass, staining the cold stone floor with faint streaks of light, like dried bloodstains of memories that had never been washed away. Max, Emily's loyal German shepherd, stood beside him, ears pricked, eyes cold, as if he knew what awaited them below. Jack pushed open the door, the rusty hinges creaking eerily. The church was empty, but it didn't feel deserted. The air was thick and heavy, as if the very walls were watching his every move. Have you ever felt, fear not from what you see, but from what you can't see? Is it the darkness that's truly scary? Or is it the things we don't dare face when the light goes out? Jack shined his flashlight, the flickering light sweeping across the altar where he'd found the trapdoor the day before. Max hissed softly, his eyes never leaving the old carpet that covered the stone floor below. Jack pulled the carpet aside. The old wooden trapdoor appeared again, this time like an invitation to danger. He opened it, a blast of cold air and a musty smell wafting up, making him fight back a wave of nausea. The stone stairs leading down were dark, like the mouth of a waiting predator. He turned on his flashlight, took a deep breath, and began to descend. Max followed close behind, the sound of his claws clicking on the steps, echoing like Jack's own heartbeat. The basement of the church was a maze of rough stone walls and rusted iron doors. Jack's flashlight beam traced the signs of decay: old chains, broken chairs, and yellowed walls. Not a place for prayer, a place to hide sins. At the end of a narrow hallway, Jack found a small room, its iron door locked with an old padlock. The rusted key he'd found in Emily's diary fitted it perfectly. The door swung open with a sickening creak. Inside was Emily Carter. She sat on the floor, her body gaunt, her eyes vacant, but they lit up when she saw Max and Jack. Max rushed in, howling in pain, licking her face as if trying to wake her from her nightmare. Jack ran over, knelt, and untied her, his voice choked. "Emily, I'm Jack. I'm here to help you. Are you okay?" Emily nodded stiffly, her dry lips quivering. Elias, he wouldn't let me die. He needed me to cover up what he did. She recounted everything in ragged breaths. Father Elias had discovered that she knew the truth about the embezzled donations, about the secrets he hid behind his mask of holiness. He had tried to kill her, but she had survived. And instead of finishing her off, he had imprisoned her here, staging a fake funeral to fool the entire town. Have you ever thought, what happens when the person you trust the most is the one stabbing you in the back? Does the truth set people free? Or is it sometimes a death sentence for those who dare to speak up? At that moment, a voice rang out from the darkness. "You shouldn't be here, Jack." Jack spun around. Father Elias stood in the doorway, his eyes bloodshot like someone who had lost all humanity. In his hand was an iron cross, not for prayer, but for use as a weapon. "You think you're a hero? You think you can save her and expose me?" Elias sneered, stepping in, the flashlight beam illuminating his face, a face that no longer had any trace of holiness. Jack stood in front of Emily, clutching the flashlight like a makeshift weapon. Elias lunged, swinging the iron cross with the fury of someone who had lost control. The clang of metal against stone was deafening, accompanied by a hateful gasp. Max lunged like a living arrow. The brave dog charged Elias, sinking his teeth into his arm and making him scream in pain. Jack seized the opportunity, snatching the cross and swinging it, sending Elias crashing to the floor. It was all over in a matter of minutes, but it felt like a lifetime. Jack, panting, knelt beside Emily. Max, covered in blood, whose blood it was, not sure, lay panting beside him. Jack whispered, "We're done. You're free." You know, sometimes heroes don't wear crowns or capes. Sometimes it's just a man who can't look away and a dog who can't take a lie. But the story isn't over, because the truth has been unearthed. And Raven Creek will never be the same again. Dawn had never looked like this in Raven Creek. The first rays of sunlight not only dispelled the darkness of the night, but also illuminated the hidden corners of truth, places that had long been hidden under a mask of lies. In front of the old church, people gathered. Their faces were a mixture of shock, anger, and pain. They could not believe that Father Elias, the man who had preached faith and salvation, was the one who brought the greatest darkness to this town. He was handcuffed, his head bowed, his eyes empty, no trace of the majesty that had once made Raven Creek respect him. Beside Jack was Emily Carter, her hands clutching the collar of her coat as if to retain some measure of her strength. Though her body was still weak, her eyes burned with a new strength, life and justice. Jack spoke, his voice echoing in the silence. The truth always finds a way to come out. Not through preaching, but through actions that cannot be hidden. This is not just Emily's story or mine. This is the story of all of us, those who once believed, who once kept silent, but now they don't. Have you ever wondered how many truths have been buried because we were afraid to face them? How many times have we turned a blind eye because lies seemed safer? Max, the faithful dog who never stopped barking, sat beside Emily, head held high, eyes shining, a living symbol of unspoken courage. The people slowly approached, a few children reaching out to pet Max, their eyes wide with respect. Max was more than a dog. He was a reminder that loyalty to the truth is always worth fighting for. No medals were given. No grand speeches were given. Just the eyes of once blind, now awakened people. A few weeks later, Raven Creek was no longer the same. The old church was now an empty building, but no longer a place to hide. It became a symbol of truth exposed, a reminder that darkness exists only when the light is not strong enough to shine. Jack didn't leave. He found something more valuable than a sensational story. He found purpose. He stayed, not only to write the article about the event, but to discover things he had never believed before. That courage could come from a stranger, a girl thought dead, or even a dog that couldn't talk. Have you ever wondered? What would happen if we didn't ignore the annoying barks, the small signs, the vague feeling that something is wrong? Perhaps it was those small details that were the call of truth, waiting for someone brave enough to listen. Raven Creek was awake. How about you? Sometimes, stories aren't just for telling. They're for reminding. The story of Raven Creek, about a dog named Max who never gave up on speaking up, a girl named Emily who faced her fears to keep the truth, and a man named Jack who couldn't turn away from what he witnessed, is more than just a thrilling journey. It's a mirror of our own lives. In our lives, we've probably encountered Father Elias, people who wear the cloak of kindness but hide dark secrets deep inside. We've all been Raven Creek people, choosing to stay silent when something isn't right because we're afraid of change. And sometimes we forget. There are Maxes in our lives, signs, warning calls, just waiting for us to listen. The lesson here is simple but profound. Never be silent in the face of injustice, even if you're just a small voice. The truth may be buried, but it never dies. And courage doesn't need to be loud. It just needs a moment of daring to step forward. If you've made it this far, thank you for your patience and for your heart's willingness to embrace not just the thrills, but also the hidden values. Now tell me, how would you rate this story from 0 to 10? There are no right or wrong answers, just your feelings. If you think this story deserves to be known by more people, click like to spread the message of courage and truth. Share it with your friends, because who knows? Someone out there might need a reminder like this. And don't forget, if you think this story is full of mystery, wait and see what happens next. In the following videos, we will bring you stories that are even more thrilling and touching, and sometimes make you wonder, could this happen to me? Hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any memorable stories. Because every story is a door. The question is, are you willing to open it? See you in the next story. We are waiting for you there.